You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks and Zach Bechtold. We hope you enjoy this week's show, and you can find out more about us by going online at beardedtheologians.com, where you can pick up a few t-shirts, listen to a few old episodes, and find ways that you can connect with us. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have a returning guest and friend of the podcast, Rev.Kara Eidson with us. Again, Kara, would you please welcome, and would you remind our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do?
Absolutely. I'm Kara Eidson. I am the pastor at McLeod United Methodist Church and Oskaloosa United Methodist Church in McLeod and Oskaloosa, Kansas, respectively. I just written my third book. It's called The Advent Tree, Meeting Jesus in God's Big Story. And the release date is September 9th, and it is going to be out just in time for folks to start planning for Advent this year. So I'm super, super excited to be published again. And I am a little bit unique in authors in that I'm serving two small rural churches. So I actually test run all my material and all my worship materials on my churches before I publish them, which is kind of fun. And I also live on 10 acres with a big garden and my goats and my chickens and my husband. So
I love that. And we love having you on for that exact reason. One, your books just hit home for lots of different congregations and sizes and spaces. But the fact that you are continuing to do the work in rural ministry and being in a space that a lot of our colleagues are in, right? Not a lot of books are coming from that perspective. And so I, for one, appreciate it being in the rural parts of Montana, that our folks are getting that as well. So we love that. And we are grateful for your work. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Advent Tree as we all kind of lean into preparation for the season?
So the Advent Tree was actually originally inspired by my family's practice of we did a Jesse Tree Bible study together when my sister and I were little, and that for that study we would read scripture every night for the 25 days leading up to Christmas, and there were these little flannel pieces that my mom had cross-stitched and put together that had the symbols for each day, and we would read the text and then we would take turns. Very important that we took turns putting up the symbols each day for whatever that text was. And so based on the tradition of the Jesse Tree, I put together the Advent Tree. It doesn't just cover Jesus's lineage as a traditional Jesse Tree does, but it tells the story of who are the Hebrew people and how do we arrive at this moment when Jesus is coming into the world and God's love is in breaking through the person of Jesus Christ. And so my sister actually coordinated with me on this book, which is really fun because my sister is not in the world of theology at all, but she did illustrations and for each symbol. So each day has its own symbol. And there are the book starts the first Sunday in Advent and ends on Epiphany. So it goes all the way through the season, all the way through the 12 days of Christmas. There are coloring pages available to download. There's adult versions and like kind of simplified kids versions that my sister designed. And in addition to that, there are tons of worship materials that are also available for download online. And those can be used by any pastors or worship teams that are choosing to incorporate this into their worship, with tons of ideas of how to incorporate that into worship, in addition to the liturgy, children's time, all of those standard things. So.
That's really cool that you're able to have all that. I know that's something that I know in the last couple of years I've been looking more for, is to have something that has a lot more things with it, and I'm not having to pair something from somewhere else or dig up those old, whatever those coloring sheets may be, but to have something that all connects is something very cool. And I really like when authors do that for churches because, many times there are people who write books for certain seasons and they don't have any liturgy for the worship service. And so you're asking people who may not have the ability or time or know how to craft liturgical responses and spaces for that. What kind of gave you the inspiration to do all that?
I just wanted to add one more thing about the book that I had forgotten as you were talking. And I remembered because there are 12 days of family devotionals that go at the very end of the book that correspond to the overall general themes of the book. And those family devotionals are a lot more kind of appropriate for if you're reading this with small children. And so those are accompanied by children's pages, children's coloring pages as well, so the whole family can participate together. Um, like I said, this was something that was really meaningful to me as a kid that my family did together. But when I went back and actually looked at the materials from the study that we used way back when in the late 80s, early 90s, I was honestly not a huge fan of some of the theology, of some of the ways that it talked about God, of some of the ways that it uh, kind of pushed the Jesus narrative onto some of the Hebrew stories in a way that kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable. And so I had actually reworked this multiple times over and over again with, I think, 4 different appointments now, to where then with Westminster John Knox, we reworked it one more time to be something that could be put out into the world and published. So it's been probably about a decade-long labor of love, and I hadn't really ever imagined that it would be something that I would put out into the bigger world. It was just something I was doing for my churches, but the more I used it and the more my folks loved it, because when my first Advent book came out, my members that had been in my small group study the year before, when we used these materials that I'd created, they were like, okay, we're going to do that study again, right, Kara? And I said, well, I have a book coming out, so I thought we'd use my new book. And they were like, oh, okay, well, I guess we can use your new book this year, but can we go back and use this again next year? And I was like, oh, okay, this really was a meaningful experience for folks. So that maybe there's something here that would be appeal to a wider audience rather than just the folks I'm serving.
Yeah, Matt and I've been putting a lot of attention and work, intentional work into intergenerational ministry in all contexts, right? But especially in our own churches. And to see you doing that intentionally, right?
Yeah.
That this is where it was birthed from. It doesn't seem to be an afterthought of like, oh, we should throw some coloring sheets in here. Oh, we
Right.
should have, something for all ages because publishing. And it seems to me that's where you're starting.
Yeah.
And what better time than the season of Advent? That any church season, that's the one that focuses more on the family connection and together and the wholeness of the church, because we're heading into out of Thanksgiving where we've just been thankful for all of the things, and then we're heading into Christmas, right? It makes so much sense to start our year there, right? And boost just be intentional about that we're going to be together. We're going to start from birth on and do this season together. And Advent's a beautiful way to do that. Yet we don't always lean into that. And so, what is it about the Advent tree, this story, taking it from, like you said, framing it with the Hebrew perspective and why and how Jesus gets to where he is? How does that really lean into the fullness of the church? If that's even a question that makes sense.
I think so. I think, well, part of it is this idea of story. There's this amazing Doctor Who quote, "We're all stories in the end, so make it a good one." And I really, really love that quote because I think that there's a lot of truth to that, and that part of who we are and telling our own stories is so important to our identities. And I have been shocked time and time again in ministry when I walk into a church and I start preaching. people are often surprised by how much Old Testament I preach from because there's this misconception in American Christianity, unfortunately, that the Old Testament is somehow old, that it's less
Mm,
relevant, that it's just like kind of, the precursor to the important stuff. And that's not the case. Like you can't, I mean, it's three-quarters of the Christian Bible is the Hebrew scriptures. And so you can't just say this part isn't that important. And I've also been frequently disappointed in how many folks have been sitting in the pews every Sunday for their entire lives and don't know the fundamental stories of
mm,
the Hebrew scriptures. And so like I will preach a series from the Old Testament from the prophets, and people will be like, I didn't know any of this stuff was in there. And you're going, this is so incredibly important to understand because Jesus isn't born into a vacuum. Jesus isn't born into this moment when nothing had happened before and nothing comes after. To understand Jesus, to understand the incarnation of the divine, we have to understand the story that comes before in the same way that we have to continually tell our own stories of those that have come before us, and we keep telling those stories to those who come after us, and that's a huge part of who we are as human beings. And just treating the Christmas story as though it starts, in the manger is a huge omission to understanding who we are called to be as Christians. Did that answer the question?
it did, yeah, yeah. I was just waiting to see if Matt would respond. No, I like that. I find myself getting in that rut. I appreciate you and so many people. Amy Jill Levine's trying to is doing this also, reclaiming the Jewish nature of Jesus in context and trying to tell the story of why Jesus does what he does. And I think that's so important. And I find myself getting lost, especially in Advent, of well, we have to do the birth narrative, right? Like the angels have to come and do the thing. We have to talk about John the Baptist. We have to do, Mary. We have to and not letting myself venture into the Hebrew scriptures of why, of how this all comes to be, because it just feels like here's the expectation. We talk
Right.
about birth of Jesus, we do the anticipation and the waiting, and then we get to Christmas Eve and we move on towards Epiphany and the rest of the year. But I think you've dug into something that I think we should, the richness of the foundation of the Hebrew story that brings us to those moments. Because without it, yeah, you're right. It doesn't hit the same. We're
No,
missing big chunks of the story,
absolutely.
and that's a fun challenge, one, but also an important reminder that these stories matter. And I think we've done a disservice in tradition of having the old and the new,
Yes.
like you said.
Well, isn't that where, I mean, I know you're not much of into the lectionary, Zach, but I think this is where leaning into lectionary during, like, especially these high holy seasons of Advent and Lent are important,
Mhm.
because if not, some of those readings sometimes are necessary for Advent to convey the larger story. And if we're just reading from the gospel each week and we're not looking at, the Hebrew Bible scripture for that week, I feel like that's where we kind of have lost some of the connection to what was coming before, was not introducing those readings, or just being stuck and just saying, "Hey, we're going to do this year for Advent. We're just going to do all the Old Testament readings and no gospel readings." Like I think that to me is where the lectionary provides some great substance for our congregations. And yeah, there are some years where the lectionary reading leaves you scratching your head, wondering what in the heck is going on here. But I think it's vital for, I mean, so especially in the high holy seasons. I mean, that's kind of the reasons why I try to incorporate it as best I can within what we do. So As you were thinking about this, Kara, I know this is like a connection for you. And I mean, here we are, like it's not even September 1st, and we're talking about Advent, which for like feels a little wrong because I still feel like we still have Hallow Thinkmas to really get through. Like there's still All Saints Sunday. There's all those Sundays to get ready for. But as you were putting this together, like what was one of the cooler moments for you as you were kind of putting all this together? Because I know it's a process of putting together a book and all the things.
Yeah.
Like what was a cool
It's a
kind of thing
long
that happened to you?
process.
A labor of 10 years of love, right?
Yes. Um, I think one of the coolest, actually the coolest moments was when that box arrived. And you see the book and you can hold the book in your hands for the first time. And it's real. One of the other coolest moments was when my sister would send me the next piece of art. And I would get to see it and see kind of this visual representation of what I've been trying to do with words was a really, really incredible moment that I haven't had in previous books. And so that was really amazing. And that actually her images are incorporated into the book itself. And so as even without downloading the images, you can still see the images each for each day as you're going through the book.
It's really cool. Appreciate the medium. Right. We talk a lot in just circles because we're public speakers, right? That
Yeah.
people learn in different ways and take in information in different ways. And I appreciate the creativity that seems to be coming from our Duke friends writing Advent books. Not to name names, but there's a lot of you who do it, and they're great, and y'all are wonderful, and you're always on the podcast. But,
Do you think
but
we could get some Duke money because we're always hosting Duke people on the
Oh,
podcast?
that's a great
it is
idea.
a
We've
great
had a lot
idea.
of Duke people on the
Yeah.
podcast now
Between
that I
Rachel
think
and
about it.
Matt, like
And
You name dropped
Sarah,
them, not us.
like we've had Sarah Heath. Oh my God, like we've
yes.
had holy
Yes.
crap, we've had a lot of Duke
Yeah.
people.
Um,
Did you have
but
Scott Crossteck on when he wrote his Advent book too? I couldn't remember.
They don't answer our emails over there at
Oh.
that church in Leawood, Kansas.
See, the beauty of still doing rural ministry. You can get a
that's
hold
right.
of me. There's my secretary's like, here's Kara's number. Call her.
Please don't. Why are you bothering me?
Exactly.
But just that integration of mediums and trying to hit the mark and evoke the story in different ways, I think is so cool. Um, Through writing and poetry and visual arts and in all of the mediums that you can. I mean, that's what we're trying to do in worship, right? We're trying to build these services in a sacred way from beginning to end. Something speaks, if not every little bit to somebody.
And that sparked something in me too that was actually not necessarily a part of the creation of this book, but I talk about it in the book. Uh, in both the liturgy for worship, but also in the family devotions, there are repeat after me prayers included for kids, so that you can do. I mean, they're kind of just prayers where it's just a short section, and then you repeat after, and you go through like a repeat after me song at camp, actually. And I do these every time I do children's time every single week, and I have been for about 4 years now at my current appointment. And a member of my congregation died very, very unexpectedly and left behind 9 young grandchildren. And I went over to the house the day that she died, and the whole family was gathered together. And I was doing my normal pastoral ministry thing. And at one point, I asked the family if they'd like to pray, and the kids immediately said, "Is it a repeat after me prayer?" And in Kara's mind, repeat after me prayers were almost these like sing-songy, playful things that we did during children's time that was sort of cute. And like it sort of served a liturgical function, but it was just more like how you end children's time.
Yeah,
It
how do we
wasn't
not be awkward when we send the kids out, right?
right. It wasn't like this meaty theological thing that was handed down to me from on high in my seminary days. It was just sort of almost like a game.
Mm.
And in that moment, in this very, very like tragic moment, these kids were wanting a repeat after me prayer. And it had never occurred to me that this could be a serious medium before. And all of a sudden, I was looking at repeat after me prayers very, very differently because the kids were taking them very seriously. And so we went ahead and I did a pastoral, a standard. I was like, we're going to do a boring grown-up prayer first, and then we'll do a repeat after me prayer. And so I went on and we did a repeat after me prayer about how much we're going to miss grandma and how much we love her and how much we know she loves us and how grateful we are that she's not hurting anymore. Um, but it was this really like transformational moment for me in my ministry, I think, because I love working with kids, I love working with youth. Um, but I don't think I have been taking that piece as seriously as it deserved. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me.
Yeah, that's one of the things that so Zach and I are in this ministry cohort looking at intergenerational ministries, and one of the through Refocus Ministries, and one of the things that they have talked to us over the last few weeks has been finding ways to make, like, sometimes we segregate things all too often, and we forget that some of those simple things, like the repeat after me part, like those things, like anybody can do those. And like I think sometimes we relegate those to, oh no, that's like only children. Like I on Sunday I used a song that I only knew from Veggie Tales. It was a children's Sunday school song, and I asked, like, I was like, you may know it as this, but I only know it as Veggie Tales because that's all I grew, like that's all I knew. And so like I feel like we if we can provide spaces for those, like not just say this is just for children, this is just
Right.
for adults, like, and just say, hey, this is for anybody that wants to pray it, and do the best you can. And I love when we can do that as the church, because I feel like that's what the church is really about, and not just only ages 5 through 7 can pray this prayer,
Right.
or can sing this song, or I feel like that we've lost the art of community building because we've segregated out so much of everything. I mean, everything out there that's being put out there is so segregated that it doesn't allow us to really build community where people can grow together in their faith, and um not just be like, oh, well, you're a child, now you're youth, now you're an adult. Like that, sometimes that progression happens, sometimes it doesn't. So the more opportunities we have to do that, I think it's important. And you're right, like the real church, that actually happens a lot easier in the real church because you have nowhere else to go.
Like, because when I do my repeat after me prayers, all the adults participate too on Sunday mornings.
Mhm.
Just because sometimes I'm up there with one kid and sometimes I'm up there with a dozen kids, and it's impossible to know who's going to show up. So on the days that I'm up there with one kid, the adults always, always, always help me out with doing the repeat after me prayer. And I think you're right. I think that there's this dichotomy between what we think of as children's ministry and what we think of as ministry for adults and youth. And I think part of that is from this myth that church can't be fun and that church can't be playful for adults. Like we are really good at play for kids, but we've forgotten that grown-ups can play too, and that's a really important part of who we are as humans. And I think we take church a little too seriously sometimes.
Mhm.
So
I'd
I
almost say
don't,
most of the time, but
yeah.
that's just me.
Yeah. Well, like God, we don't worship a serious God. Have you looked at the platypus? I mean, like,
I mean, I was just say Zach, but I mean, you went platypus, so
I feel like a platypus today. Uh,
like it's not God. God likes to play, and
right.
there was I talked about this in another one of my books. But the story of this kiddo that wanted to play in the baptismal water, and the family was just mortified, and I was like, heck. I want to play in the water too.
Mhm.
Let's play. Like that. I think God would love that. That we're playing in the baptismal waters and not
Mhm.
just treating it as this boring, serious, thing that can't involve laughter and play.
Mhm. No, and yeah, absolutely. I love that because we do. When we view worship as a serious adult thing, right?
Mhm.
Like we, I, I'm going to use phone in the children's time, which I don't really mean that, right? But
Yeah.
it's a second thought. It's not the first thing on our minds as we're crafting the worship service often. And we forget to have that playful, silly moment. And the children's time tends to serve that purpose, right? It's the kids get to say silly things, we laugh with them, and we pray and we go home. And yet, what if we started with the intentionality there, built outwards, and kept that lightness, that seriousness, that sacredness, all wrapped in one, to let people loosen up and hear who and where God's calling them to be. Because when we take it from the serious adult aspect of it, we miss it. We miss the humor within Scripture. We miss Jesus being beyond frustrated with the disciples and just kind of having that, really? You're gonna ask me one more time? Do you not remember when I fed the 5,000 people? You were there. What more do you want to see?
Who am I
Uh,
supposed to love again, Jesus?
right. Uh, like this last Sunday, I was preaching on the parable of the yeast, right? And it's super quick. It's easy to kind of miss in the grand scope of these parables Jesus is telling. But I think we see a lot of Jesus's personality in that. He's like, hey, there's this lady in the kingdom of heaven is like this. There's this lady in the kitchen, and she puts a little bit of yeast into 60 pounds of flour. That is an absurd amount of flour.
A lot of flour.
And I can imagine Jesus just being in that moment of like, everybody's got a pound of flour. Everybody's got a bag of five 5 pound bag of flour in the pantry, right? What's an absurd amount? What's more than you can buy at Costco? 60 pounds, great. Let's go with that. And we miss that if we're just like, oh, there's a lady in the kitchen. She makes some things and now there's bread, right? Like the yeast goes through. That's what the kingdom of heaven is like. Yet there's something funny there in 60 pounds of flour if you've
Yeah.
ever made any bread.
Yeah.
And we miss that if we don't lean into the fullness of what worship can be for all of us. If we take it so damn seriously that we miss those moments. We miss when Jesus is being funny, which I think is more often than not. Uh, uh, and we just turn it into something it's not. And we don't let it grow and breathe.
Yeah. I had this moment this last Sunday when at the end of my second service at my second church, um, my benediction just fell apart. Like the words turned into word salad, and then I was speaking nonsense. And I finally just pulled it back together and said, yeah, go love people and don't be a jerk. Amen.
Right.
And someone coming out of church goes, that was the best benediction I've ever heard.
Right.
And that's what
And
I was trying to say in a really fancy way that I had
Mhm.
all written out and ready to go. And it just didn't come together for whatever reason this last Sunday morning. And so I just ended with what I was really trying to say is love people and don't be a jerk.
Right, which sometimes is all we need to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all we need to say.
So,
Oh, go ahead, Noah.
where can we find your book?
So it is available pretty much any place that you can purchase books. I know some folks are trying to avoid certain places, but you can buy it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can purchase it at Cokesbury if you're not a Methodist. It's available at Westminster John Knox because that's my publisher. So pretty much any place you get your church resources should be available.
Cool. We'll definitely have a link to that on our in the show notes. So way people, well, to somewhere, one of the places, many places you can buy the book,
Yes.
because none of the presses actually give us money to do this, so we'll pick one at random. So
Well, and if you have a local bookstore that you really like, if you ask for it, normally they will order whatever you want. So if you go in and it's not a Christian bookstore and you're like, hey, can you order this for me? They can still order it. So if you have a
Mhm.
local bookstore you really enjoy, that's a good way to go get it too.
cool. Well, we definitely want to thank you for being on today. We always love having you on, and just adding to our Duke collection of people that we can have. Maybe the Duke Seminary Foundation can give us a little bit of money to continue the podcast.
We should come on together. Matt Rawl and I have known each other since 2004. We were in seminary together. Actually, we were in a Duke. We were in a basketball camp out together. So we were in study groups together. Like, we've known each other for a very long time. So
that was the most Duke sentence ever said on this podcast.
we were in the same basketball camp out group. Well, like at Duke, like that's one of the ways you form your friend group in your first year is basketball camp out. It's kind of a formative experience. So
love it.
Yeah.
We love all of our Duke friends and Duke author podcast friends. You guys make us go around.
I'm actually headed back to Duke for a week coming up. I'm taking my very first renewal leave of ministry. And so I haven't been back on campus since I graduated in 2007. So I'm going to go spend a week out there just kind of walking campus and getting to sit in on some lectures and that kind of thing. So I'm excited.
Nice.
That's awesome. Good job.
Well, we want to thank our listeners for listening, and you can find all of our great information at beardedtheologians.com, where you can buy shirts, hats, all the things. And then
do you still have the mugs? This mug is my favorite mug.
We sure do. Look at you.
Still have a lot of mugs. Yes. Way to show some merch.
That's right. It seriously is my favorite mug because it's huge. I love this thing.
Yeah, that's usually one that we send out to people that are on the show quite a bit. So, definitely thank you for listening. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Guys, and like this video. And push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.